Okay, so this is the intro 2. Last time I opened it as when I had a problem with a license or something where it was in safe mode, I think, so I didn't have all the features. I want to go back and take a look at those little things. Again, if you have any questions, just raise your voice or your hand and let me know. So when you open Rhino, actually you get this view, maybe if you have your free version, and you have these two big windows. They're called Rhinocam, machine browser and machine objects. These are actually just windows if you're going to use some Machinica tools that are embedded within Rhino, such as the Rhinocam that talks to the mill machine. So imagine later on if you want to deal with like an urban site and you want to use the mill machine to actually cut through the wood and subtract the wood to create that model, this tool you will be using, the Rhinocam. I know you have some settings and some video recordings within the Cave tutorials that explain how to use this tool. So that's actually within Rhino, and it's good to actually know about. But we're not going to enter into this business here. You can close any of those windows. Okay. Again, as we mentioned, there's 4 windows in Rhino. Let me see this here. Now we can step on each of the windows, turns blue, we can double click, go to the window, double click, go back to 4. We can also use this in the bottom to actually take a look at the different views of the interface. We have the command line that we can type stuff such as box, you want to create a box, and then you press enter and you follow instructions. The instructions could be in the form of introducing, clicking your mouse or pressing numbers, etc., etc. Within the instructions, you also sometimes have these sub options that allows you to create other things with the same tool. So here it's saying first corner of base, I'm going to click, then it says other corner of base or length, I'm going to click there, and then height. That would be a first box. But the same goes if I click sphere or type sphere, click center, and then draw and create another sphere. We have many solids that we can create. These are like the primitive solids, such as cylinders, pyramids, tubes, etc., etc., torus. We can also create a bunch of line work. If we go actually to the top view here, we can work with all of these line work, such as curves or polylines. We can also create arcs, shapes, so it's circles, obviously rectangles. We can also do fillets, trims, extensions, all of the same issues that you can do in Rhino. In AutoCAD, you can do them here. And we will work a little bit more on those things. Okay, I'm pressing now Control Tab to go from one view to another. So if I say Control Tab, it goes to the top view, Control Tab to the front view, Control Tab to the right view and back to perspective. Last time I mentioned, but it didn't work out, that if you click on the triangle next to the word perspective, that you have a bunch of options. Now you can see them properly. You have different ways of seeing the interface. For example, shaded. You can see shaded objects. Allows you to see more in mass the different elements. You have also render. This is pretty much as close as you can get as if you were to use the blue sphere here, which is a rendering tool. But here you're just seeing it all the time. You can use the ghosted. You can see a little bit through, which could be useful sometimes. X-ray, it's a similar one to ghosted. Technical, which shows a little bit of that style of dash lines for hidden lines. Artistic, pretty much get the idea. Each of those are differently showing the same interface. Pen, artistic, ray trace, and V-ray. These are more like rendering styles. I normally use just the wireframe or the shaded off. Sometimes I go to the render just to see how it looks, and sometimes I go to the ghosted so I can see a bit more information behind. but I wouldn't go to render or the other ones because it takes a lot of memory. I normally keep it simple. Okay. We mentioned how to select things. So if you want to select things, you just click the left button of the mouse and it turns yellow. You can actually add to the selection by maintaining Shift press. And you can press Control to deselect the objects. We also talked about this thing called Gumball. Gumball is this gizmo that appears when you have Gumball selected, and it's highlighted in bold letters down there. Okay, if you have selected, this gizmo appears, and then you can use the gizmo to move the objects, to rotate the objects, and to scale the objects, the three things. To move by selecting the arrows, you can move in the X direction, up and down with the blue arrow, and front and back Y direction with the green arrow. The arcs allow you to rotate. Probably it's better if I use the box to show that. I'm using the blue arc to rotate in the XY. You can always press Ctrl X, obviously, to go back. The red arc will be in the ZY plane, and the green arc in the ZX plane, rotating. And then the boxes allow you to stretch, which is a scale in one direction, in the other direction, or in the other direction. Control Z, Control Z. If you want to scale in all directions, you press Shift. It allows you to scale this in all directions. Okay. Good. When you see this gizmo, the gumball, which you're going to be using a lot, I imagine, you see that there's a little plane, like a grid of 4 little squares. That little grid appears as you orbitate with the right click of the mouse. Depending on where you're looking at, that grid appears in a different place. Well, that means that you can move the object respecting both the arrows at the same time where this plane is located. For example, this grid will constrain the movement for the Y and X plane. If I move a little bit, that new plane appears here that will constrain the movement for the Z and Y plane. And as I rotate, that new box or new grid will constrain the movement to the Z and X. So there are different ways of moving respect a particular plane orientation. Okay, we talked also about layers. Obviously, we can create new layers. We can select the layers and place the objects in a particular layer by right-click and change object layer. That will be in the layer number 1, and it will turn the color of that layer. You can change the color of the layer, of course, by clicking on the box to the right of the little lock, and you can select another color, and there you go, you change it. Again, select the object, right-click on the layer you want to change it, change object layer. Select the object, change, right-click, the layer you want to take it, change object layer. You can lock the layers so you won't be able to select them at all. You can turn it off and on. You can unlock them You can change the name of the layer. Hello. Pedro. Yeah. Okay. Visibility, lock, and color. Let's not confuse the box, the color box, with the material that it renders. This box demonstrates the way you see it in the interface. It does not relate at all with how it renders. Which takes me to the next step. Let's render this. If I click on the option, here's render tool. This is the blue sphere. This will give me a render of whatever is in the interface at the moment in a box. Let's see if it does it. Fantastic. Maybe because I'm sharing with Zoom does not work. Let me see. If you click the blue sphere, that gives you a render. Hello, people. Let me. Okay, so if you click on the blue sphere, this is what should happen. Let me see if it actually works for you. Do you see this window now? Do you see any window processing here with horizontal white bands appearing? Yep.
I see
Nothing comes up for me.
Okay, well, don't worry about your screen. I think the important one is like the one I'm sharing, and then we can focus on how yours is not working or not. This is what it's supposed to be doing for all of you. If you click on the blue sphere, you should actually be seeing this. Okay. Okay, so that's the rendering technique. And then there will be a little break and I will ask each of you what could be the problem. Okay, let's continue with the process and see. Now, as I said before, we have a color of the boxes here, and that represents the color of the interface. That's how we actually see the objects that are in that layer in a particular way to demonstrate, to understand whether they're from one layer or another. No? But they will all render the same way. How do they render? They render according to the circle to the right of the box. So for example, the purple is under the layer Pedro, and the cylinder is under the layer hello. So if I change the Pedro circle, I'm gonna, for now, just assign a very simple material, such as a glass material here. You can change it under type, say okay. You will say glass there. And then the layer hello, which is actually the box, I can click on the circle and, for example, make this like a paint in red. And it will say paint red there. And the yeah, which is the yellow cylinder here, I'm gonna click the circle. I'm gonna make it, for example, a gem, whatever, and like a diamond or aquamarine or emerald or whatever. I can change the type of gem that I'm using. Those are the defaults. So notice how some of the layers here, layer 4 and 5, have no assigned material. Those will always render white neutral, the standard and default material. But for hello, Pedro, and yeah, I actually change them by clicking on the circle and allows me to kind of change the material for each of those objects. In theory, and if it all works, if I click on this, again, the blue sphere always, those three materials will be different from the rest in the way they render. Let's wait a little bit and see. You can see already a little bit of color appearing there. I think it's going slow also because I'm sharing with Zoom and I have several softwares open, so it's obviously like a slow process. Has anybody, and while this is going on, I would like you to try to change the material of a couple of objects, having them in different layers, and to actually assign different materials. Try some of the standards, glass, paint, change the colors, etc., etc.